I click go live again. It looks live. It looks live. It's live? Oh my God, we got confirmation. So every time I do this, I got to restart my dang browser and then jump back in for it to work. What an annoying piece of crap that is. Anyway, welcome. It's week one of the PageMotor live stream. We're going to do this every Friday. I'm going to be rounding up the cool stuff that's happening in the PageMotor ecosystem. And I'm going to show you all that good stuff. And then in addition to that, we're going to be talking about the whole website economy. Things are changing pretty rapidly right now. A lot of agencies are kind of converting their operations and their processes over to AI. A lot of agencies are also converting. There's like a big shift away from the way we used to do things into new territories. And so I want to talk about that stuff every week because there's a lot to go over there. And we can explore a lot of these topics together on here. And I think it's a great way to do it. So I have a little rubric, I guess, for the day, a few things that we're going to be talking about. But like I said, the first thing I want to do is show you some plugins that people built with AI for PageMotor in the last week. Okay, so the beta has only been available for now. This is the 8th day. It's starting the 8th day right now, and yet there's been at least 3 plugins developed with AI already that work. So we're going to look at those. That's really great. And in addition to that, I'm going to go over. Hopefully, the code will display this time. I'll be able to show you that stuff. It should work. But, I've had some problems with the live stream, so we'll see. But anyway, we'll go over some of the code. And I want to point out some interesting things that I've noticed that these AIs are doing or can do. And it really shows a lot of promise in terms of how these AIs will work with PageMotor. Some of the things that Claude in particular, which is touted to be like the best AI for code right now, some of the things that Claude has done really impressed me. And so I can't wait to show you all that stuff. So let's get started. I'm going to show you a little bit of stuff that we got working here. So let's take a look at this real quick. All right, I will share my screen. We're going to do this. Hopefully this is the right one. Let's see if we can see. You guys can see this okay? Yeah, should be okay for now. I got a little pop-up from Chrome, but I think should be good to go. Hey, Sam's in the chat. Good to see you, Sam. Casey's here. Casey's been messing with AI and built some plugins. We're going to look at something he did. Keith is here. Seventh Scroll is here. What's up, everybody? Okay. Sean Davis is here. What up? And all right. So this is the actual PageMotor website, and I've been using this to guinea pig a lot of the stuff everybody's been working on, which is kind of crazy since the site is live and people can sign up for the beta there and do actual things. But I'm a cowboy like that, so that's what we're doing. So over here on the Manage Plugins page, we can see that I've got quite a few plugins installed. We got this one, ElmsPark Forms by Ken Jordan. We're going to look at that first. Then we've got Open Graph Meta Tags by C7N. That's Casey here in the chat. And we got PM Breadcrumbs. That's also by Casey. And I believe, and I want you guys to correct me if I'm wrong. I want to get the information right. But I think Casey built that with OpenAI, which is ChatGPT. And Ken was using Claude to build the ElmsPark forms. And he's already at version 3.0.7. He's been cranking out versions at a dizzying rate, which it just makes me laugh. Because that's the nature of this AI stuff. You could just iterate like crazy. And that's what he's done. So let's look at the way the Forms plugin works up front. All right. So I've activated the plugin here. And what we can do is go to the settings pages here. And the forms have a little minimal setup. You can input a notification email. So this is if somebody uses your forms, that form submits some information. This is the email address that the form information is going to be sent to. You've got some other options here. You can change like a little bit of design details. There's an accent color for the forms. And then you can include a company name, a GDPR, privacy sort of notification that's required in the EU. You get a privacy policy URL if you want to include that kind of stuff. Data protection URL. I don't even know what this is. I guess it's a data protection policy, like to say, hey, your information's secure. We're not going to spam you, that kind of thing. So just some basic options for your forms. And then what you do for now, and remember, this is a beta, okay? We're going to figure out pathways to make all this stuff a lot more palatable for normal users, all right? But for now, if you want to add a form to your pages, you go into the theme editor, and I've actually set up a custom template. So we're going to go to my custom template where I rolled this out. And here we've got a page container, and this contains the content and information that's relevant to the current page that's being displayed on the website when this template runs. Within this, you've got some extra boxes here, and initially the form box is going to be down here in the tray. So you can click on it in the tray, and it will get added to the active area up here. So we're just going to leave it right there where it is. But this box also has some options or settings. And you can use these options. They're actually sneaky clever here. This is sneaky powerful. So you give your form a title. You can choose to use a form builder or not. That's in super beta, so we're not going to mess with that right now. But what I like is this form fields configuration. And if you've ever used something like Gravity Forms for WordPress, this is one way they enable end users to configure their forms. It's this pipe delimited language or convention for telling the software what forms you want or what input fields you want your form to output. So you can have like a text. I'm not a pro at this, so I'm not going to go full cowboy here and do a bunch of stuff. But like this one says, okay, give me a text field, a text input. We're going to call it name, and then the label for that field is going to be your name. This one's an email input. Call it email. That's how we'll reference it in the code later. That's for the operator. And then we've got a label called email address. And then the last one's text area. We're going to give it a reference of message, and then the label is message. So in our form, we can expect 3 input fields to appear: a text field, an email text input field, and a text area for the message content. And then we've got a submit button. You can modify the text on that. I've done that here. I've changed it from submit, I think is the default. I've changed it to send it. And then we've got some other stuff. You can have an AJAX submission, which is when the user clicks the button on the form page or the page where the form lives to submit it. It doesn't refresh the page. Sometimes that's a desirable UI feature. That's still in beta, so we're not going to do that at the moment. You can enable the GDPR stuff if you're in the EU or just want to add an extra click for your visitors. And then you've got you can control the text that displays when the GDPR notice pops up. So we're not going to mess with that, but we are going to look at this. So we've got our settings here. Once you've added this to your template, you can just save the template. And so this is a custom template. So real quick, this is a new thing in PageMotor 0.2.2 beta. But you can, if you've created a custom template, you can go into your content editor and go to any page. I've got my test page here. And if you want to display that custom template instead of the default page template that's going to display there, you can just scroll down here to the content options and choose a custom template to deploy on this page. So we're going to use that test template, custom template. We're going to save it. And we're going to go look at that page on the front end. And here it is. I've also got another plugin I'm testing up here called the Breadcrumbs plugin that Casey made. That's just a little preview. But this is our form. So we have, if we go back and look at our template here, you'll notice that we're showing the content of the page and then the form. So if we go back over here, this is the title of the page. This is the content of the page that I entered into the editor on the previous screen. And then this is the form. It finally displays. So we've got name, email address, message. You notice how he's got a little highlight behavior here on the active input field. That's pretty cool. And we've got a send it button at the bottom. And so you could, enter your details. enter an email address and say, yo, does this work? And we're going to keep the typo, forget it. And we sent the message and it does send. Now I've not been able to receive a message yet, but there are SMTP based reasons for that. So that's not a big deal yet. But bottom line is that stuff works on that front end UI, and I was able to create a form. Now I could go back into the editor and change the way that form works. We could add another field like a text field. We'll call it username. We'll say your PageMotor username, and we'll save that. And now this page will be different. It's added a field. I think that's really cool. There's various ways that I've dealt with adding form fields in the past, and they're kind of clunky, like using boxes like we saw in that template editor, or using some sort of blocks and dragging and dropping and all that stuff. This little pipe delimited method is deceptively simple and powerful. Like I really like this. And I also like how AI could easily spit this out. Like that's really nice. So like there's a lot of potential benefits to something like this. If you're familiar with, so like when you enter content into a various editors you use on the internet, some of these things are Markdown enabled. Markdown is a little way of using text input, keyboard-based text input to get, formatted text. Markdown is really, really like deceptively simple and good and powerful. I really like Markdown. This method of creating forms and form input fields is similar to Markdown in that regard. Like it's distilling that output down into only the unique stuff. Like tell me what is unique about this output. Only tell me that, and do everything else that I need you to do. Like any system or input mechanism that works that way is, to me, it's done the right way. But why it's correct is that it is so useful in so many different circumstances. AI can cook with anything like this. If you have any system, process, whatever, where all you're supplying is the data that is unique, AI will and can and will excel at that type of process. So if you see something like this, you should be ding, 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 ding. I can get a lot of leverage from the systems that everyone's building right now for the future. So that is really good stuff. I love that. I'm so glad Ken introduced me to that, because I don't use Gravity Forms, but they got some good stuff cooking over there, I think. So that's really great. I love this. And so right now, this just a note for my beta peeps, this plugin, the Forms plugin, declares its HTML output as a dependent of the page container, which means you can't just go up here into the editor and deploy an instance of a form directly. You can only have a page container and then access a form from within it. In the future, I think Ken's going to change this over to be what is called a multi-instance box instead of a dependent box. So an example of a multi-instance box, we've got up here, anything that has an asterisk up here, which I'm not seeing on my video. I don't know, is this appearing for you guys when I click on this? Or is it just a delay for me? Are you seeing that pop up? I don't think you're seeing the pop up. Well, up here in the select a box to add drop-down selector, there's boxes that are asterisked. If they're asterisked, that means it's a multi-instance box, and you can deploy a bunch of these. Like there's a text box. You can deploy a text box, give it a name, text box 1. Then you can deploy another text box, give it a name, text box 2. So I'll do one real quick just because I think it'll appear in the UI. So the selection worked, but the pop-up for the selector doesn't work. Okay, it's annoying. I need to know this stuff. So text box, we'll say this is text box 1. And then we can do another one, text box 2. These are multi-instance boxes. We can have multiple instances of these boxes. And then we can drag them over under our templates and put them wherever we want. With forms, you'll be able to do that. And then you'll be able to say, okay, you'll be able to go into the options and select which form that you've already defined that you want to display. That'll be really powerful. And then the corollary to that, I guess, is that some over here in the plugin options, maybe there'll be a way to define a bunch of different forms. Actually, the best way to do this would have this be a content type. And you would go into the content editor and say, okay, set up a new form. And then you would go in here. This is a page, obviously, but you create a new form. Choose what options you want for that form. Do something like I showed you on the other tab where was doing the the text space input for the form to define it and to choose the options like GDPR or not, that kind of thing. And so you set up your form content types, and then in the editor, you would simply deploy an instance and say, hey, show this one. Okay, that would be really, really slick. Because so this takes us back to another basic concept in PageMotor, but that really needs to exist anywhere you manage content. Like you define your content types, and this you have like a nice, easy way to manage them. Okay, I know I'm working with a form. Okay, I know I'm working with modular content. Okay, I know I'm working with a page. Okay, I know I'm editing my homepage. Like that's a really nice delineation. It's very clear what you're doing. To be able to do that with forms, that's pretty slick. And then to be able to just toss that into your templates as needed and say, hey, okay, give me a forms box and show this form. And that's the way that's going to work. And, you can use that box on other pages. So you could use the same box to show the same form on different pages if you wanted. Like, let's say you had an email opt-in, you wanted to drop this a few places on your site. This would be an easy way to do that. So a lot of potential there. I think that is really, really nice. Let's look at another one. This one's super simple. It's the PM Breadcrumbs plugin. And it's only got one option. You can control what the home breadcrumb is. I didn't even test this. So here is an example of the output. I don't have any nested pages on this site yet. Let's do that real quick. I'll make a nested page so we can see how this works. So we'll go back to this other tab. It's so fast to do this stuff. Might as well just do this. So we'll go in here. We're going to create a new page. We'll call it nested page. We're going to choose test page as the parent. We'll give it a slug of nested. This page is nested for fun. And we're going to use that custom template because that one has the breadcrumbs plugin on it and the others do not. All right, so now we did that. We're going to go to our tab and we're going to go to nested. And now, so the nested crumbs do not work. Okay, so we've figured we'd test that out. I'd have to go in and look at why that's the case. I'm not sure, sure there's a very simple reason why that nested hierarchy doesn't work. I have seen examples though of that working. Here is an example of that working. This is on Ken Jordan's site. Ken made the Forms plugin. He has a nested URL structure working right there. So apparently it works. I'm not sure why it's not working on my my little test installation there. But it does work. So it's real nice to have a breadcrumbs trail. I like to use this on all internal navigation pages. So like, let's go to DIYthemes.com. I'll share this tab. So like, I like to have a nav at the top. And then if you go to any nav link, I don't show that nav on every page of the site. Once you've drilled down into the site, I like to show the breadcrumb trail so and then you can offer a menu that's relevant to this page, to like where you are in the site. Hey, these options are relevant to you now. The overall universal nav may not be. Like if you're here looking at focus, you probably don't care about the blog on the website. You probably don't care about the about page right now. You're looking at stuff that's relevant to focus because that's where you are in the website. So I like to do that. I totally rely on breadcrumbs now. I think they're super valuable. That's my preferred method of doing navigation at this point, not using a universal nav menu on every page of the site. I think there's some circumstances where you could make the case that makes sense to do. But from an information organization standpoint, drilling down into the hierarchy of the site with the breadcrumbs makes a ton of sense. And critically, the point that gets overlooked here is you always have to be going back to the way attention works now. The way attention works now. Once upon a time, people used websites for browsing and exploring the internet. Websites were the gateway to everything else on the internet because we used to have a bunch of links in the sidebar and stuff, and you could see like, oh, maybe I'll like this other website too, and you go click on this stuff. That is not how attention and behavior work on the internet anymore. Everybody, everybody uses two things for discovery and browsing now. And those two things are social media and email. Those are the only places people browse and click on new things. Statistically speaking, that's what it boils down to. And so that means your website has to cater to a different type of attention. Your website should not be asking people to browse around aimlessly. Your website should be drilling people down into very specific content and asking them to take very specific actions. Sign up to my email form, buy my product, learn this specific thing you're here to learn. Whatever it is, you want to maximize that engagement. And the best way to do that is to minimize any on-page distractions. And one of the biggest on-page distractions is a navigation menu that has a bunch of options in it. When you present people with a bunch of options, whether you like it or not, their brain is processing this stuff in the background thinking, well, maybe I should be doing this instead. Maybe this is my off ramp. Like if I get a little bit bored, I'll just click on this thing and suddenly my attention is shattered. I leave the site because I'm going to go back to my dopamine hit on the social media feed because websites don't offer nearly the same level of dopamine. There's not enough new stuff happening all the time. So you really got to be wary of this stuff and the way you construct your pages and really think about every element that's there because we just get used to having stuff in certain places on websites. But the reality is that stuff may not and probably is not serving our best interests anymore. Attention is changing. You got to be on the cutting edge of that and realizing what you have to do to get the results you want. Okay, so that's a bit of a rant there, but there's some breadcrumbs. Let's look at the other plugin we got on here, and it is an open graph plugin. I guess there's not options for that, which is fine. So what I did with the Open Graph plugin, if you're using this in the PageMotor beta forums, you can grab that. Casey posted it, I think, yesterday. But we go into theme settings. If you want to add this to it, you have to add it to a template in order to get it to display. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add it to a template. Once again, I've got my test template. And Open Graph output appears in the HTML head. So we want to expand the HTML head in this case. The box would be down here in the tray initially. I'll put it back down there so you'll see what it'll look like when you pull it up. It's going to be down here, and I'm going to drag it up or click it, and then I'm going to drag it up above the title tag. And I'll explain why I do that in just a moment. This placement, just I'm giving you all the details here. So I'm going to put it there. We're going to save it, and then we can go into our content now and go to our test page. And beneath the content, we have this array of content options. The Open Graph plugin spits out some options here, and you can put in a custom title for your Open Graph card that results. So if you have Open Graph markup on a page, it results in something called an Open Graph card, which is an image, a title, and a brief description. And now, so platforms that display Open Graph cards can choose what parts of that they want to honor. They don't have to honor all of them. But pretty much every system that outputs Open Graph cards will honor the image and the title. Not all of them honor the description. I think X is either showing like just a few characters from the description now or just showing a title. It shows a big image. The whole thing's clickable, which is great. You add a link to your website to social media, and if that resulting page includes an Open Graph card in the markup, instead of just a basic link displaying, the social media platform will display a big clickable image, usually with some title text either overlaid or just put just underneath that image. It's really, really great. I'll show you an example of that in just a moment. So anyway, you can enter this information here, and you can give those platforms whatever they need. Like Facebook will display a description beneath your Open Graph card. I think LinkedIn displays a description as well. But bottom line is the social media outlets have the independent choice over the way they choose to display this stuff. But you want an image in there. That's kind of the main thing. So let's go look at an example of this. This is from the PageMotor beta forums. Casey included a couple pictures here that are real handy. So these are from Facebook, but you can see here's one. Take the mouse off this top one here. This one has the image, the big image, which is great. It shows the URL of the site that you can expect to go to when you click on the link. And then it shows the title and a little description underneath. So Facebook, like I said, shows the full Monty there. Here's another larger version. This is from Facebook. Same kind of deal. These are really nice to add to your pages. Okay. But so like I think it's essential if you're going to bother including links to your site on social media. You're going to look like a pro if you have this. You're not going to look like a pro if you don't. I assume people know this by now, but it bears repeating. If your content includes a large image, it's going to get noticed a heck of a lot more, like many, many multiples more than if it does not. So basically, it wasn't even worth taking the action if you didn't do this. All right, so let's go back over here. So we've defined, I've given this an open graph image. So we'll go to our site. We'll share this tab. We'll go to our test page, and we will take a look at the markup. And we can see right here that these open graph tags have now been included in the markup. And this is what social media feeds and stuff and anything else that honors open graph tags will do. It goes to the URL that's specified that you link to, and it scours that page looking for this markup. And if it has it, it uses that to create the open graph card that people can click on. It's, you know, it's a pretty cool system, really, the way all that works. But I mentioned earlier that I placed it above the title and description. Just want to give my reasoning for this. So WordPress, the head part of WordPress documents has always been a damn mess because the way their whole thing works. And so we've kind of just gotten used to that being a mess. I don't love that. There's in some cases for certain items, there's a specific order that they need to appear. And so things like preloads and preconnects, which is all this stuff right here, that needs to appear first in the HTML head. If you're using Google Analytics, they recommend that be first in the head as well. So like some things need to appear at the top of the head output. And then there's a natural order that follows after that. You'll notice like I've got a couple meta tags up here. These are necessary to describe the way the page is going to work. And then I've got a series of links here. So all the links occur in some order, but they're all the links are in one spot. And then we move on to things like meta robots. This is like quiet data about the way the page should be interpreted. And I could even move this up above with the other metas that describe the way the page is going to work. Like maybe that would be better organization. And I could even conceivably put the open graph meta tags up there as well. But when this stuff loads resources, these links, the pre-connects and style sheets and stuff, it loads resources. So you want those getting hit first in the markup, so they're loading as fast as possible, because that directly affects the user's experience. So even though putting these meta tags above it really wouldn't have any effect, I'm playing to the crowd here and making sure this stuff's loading as fast as possible. It's the first thing that gets served. But there's a long-winded way of saying the stuff I'm putting at the bottom is the title tag and the meta description output, which describes exactly what is on this page. Historically, the title and meta description have been towards the top. And I think it makes sense to have those things be like the last things that are served in the document head. With PageMotor, that's possible. With WordPress, this was not really even a discussion that we were able to have, but things have changed. So that is, a new convention we could maybe follow there. And, if sure some nerd at some point is going to totally drill down into like the very best way to optimize and organize a document head. And I'm here for that. All right. Anyway, and one more thing I want to mention about PageMotor 0.2.2. For my beta peeps, I've added this template name output to the body class of the page. So no matter what template is rendering, it will say something. So if this was the basic page template, this class would be template dash page. This template is named test template. So PageMotor looks at that and scrubs the output and sanitizes it, and lower cases it, and then replaces spaces with dashes, and then spits that out in the body tag. So that way you can target this page specifically in your CSS if you want to only style, if this template is rendering, apply these styles to the website. That's your avenue for doing that. So that's a new thing that actually existed in Thesis for years and Focus, and that's the way that's worked. It wasn't like that in the first couple releases of PageMotor, but it is like that now. All right. So let me get back to my tab here. So now we have seen those three plugins. Those three plugins, the Breadcrumbs, the Open Graph stuff, and the Forms plugin, those were all built with the assistance of AI, and in some cases, almost totally with AI. So that is pretty amazing to me, especially since we're only a week into this. But what I really love is how much promise is shown by that. Okay, so let's review that. So the Forms plugin here, it creates a settings page for like whenever this plugin is going to be used, these settings are going to apply. That is significant. Within the theme editor, we have this instance of the plugin that's known as a box. So if a plugin has HTML output, it defines itself as either a box or a container. So if a plugin has an expression of itself that's a box or a container, we know that it is going to have HTML output that can be used in templates. This thing is called a container. You can drag other boxes or containers into it. And these things are boxes. They're terminal points of output. You can't drag anything else into them, but they do have some output. So it's like once the template is rendering and it reaches this point, it'll output the HTML for that box, and then it will move on to the next item. There's nothing else to render within it. So it is a terminal point of output, but it doesn't terminate the total rendering. It just moves on to the next item. So this is a box, and this is a container. Was making a point about this. So Ken's Forms plugin declares itself as a box. Indeed, in this case, a dependent box that can only that only appears if a page container is there. But like I said, I think that behavior needs to change. But when it declares that box, the box also has options, specific options. These are HTML options. There's another form of options that this could have that are called box options. Box options are really cool. We'll look at that real quick, because box options convey to this editable elements page. And this gives users a one-stop shop for changing any item that has box options that appears in templates. So like I've got this footer, I've got a text box in the footer of the website. I'll show you that. It says powered by PageMotor. This is just a text box. So we can go over here and actually edit what that says. We could remove it. We could make it say copyright, whatever, all rights reserved, whatever you want to say. And you could change that right there. That's a great way to edit stuff that's in your templates without having to mess with that template editor. And so, Ken could have declared those HTML options that we were looking at in the template editor. He could have declared them as boxed options, and we could edit them here. A lot of these things have box options. So the AI can be told, hey, create site options for this plugin, create box options for this plugin, create HTML options. I'll show you another form we saw with the breadcrumbs that we've got content. The breadcrumbs plugin spits out content options. That's these guys down here. So we got content options. Content options. So let's just talk about that real quick. Content options are options that are relative to a particular piece of content. So if I were to set these, like I set the custom template here, and I've got this open graph image URL, this stuff gets saved relative to this piece of content. So it's only going to appear on the front end of the website if we're looking at that piece of content. So like the open graph image that I specified in that previous screen, that's only going to appear on this page. That the image I specified is only going to appear in the open graph markup on this page. So it's unique. That is really cool about content options, because you want options, disregard plugins, disregard all that. If you just think about the way you need a site to work, some stuff needs to be saved relative to the content, to a specific piece of content. Some stuff needs to be saved relative to the site. That's what these overall overarching plugin settings are. We call these site options. Some stuff needs to be saved relative to an instance of a plugin or an instance of a box that appears in templates. That's what the editable elements are. So if I were to set any of these, it would only be relative, it would only show up. These options would only apply when this particular box appears in the template. HTML options work the same way. It's just a separate delineation to say, hey, these are specific to HTML markup. These options can be anything. They can determine like how the plugin behaves, how the output behaves. It's unlimited there. So we got box options. We have another type of options that are saved relative to the theme. So we'll look at that. So there's only one plugin that works this way right now. It's the favicon. But like if you have a theme is basically a design, and your design is unique right now. Usually it's like, let's say the colors mine are red and yellow right now. So I would have a favicon that honors that or pulls from that design motif. And so I've got a little PNG file. That's this PageMotor logo here, this little motor guy. That's what this is. And I've created that, and I've saved it, and it is what appears in the browser tabs as the favicon right now. Like if I were to change the front end design and change my colors to like blue and yellow, then I would presumably upload a different favicon to honor those colors. But you see, it's relative. So it's saved relative to the theme, because if the theme changes, well, then, the previous favicon you had may no longer apply. So options can be created by plugins that are relative only to a theme. If you change the theme, you might want this thing to have different set of options. So there's a lot of ways for plugins to interact with the larger system and do stuff in different places. I think there's probably going to be a couple more of these. I call these valet options. There's probably going to be a couple more valet options in the future, such as ones that appear on the user. Like if you, there's no set module here for controlling users on the website, like to go in and like check out the admin user, add a new user, that kind of thing. But on the screens that end up existing for this, it's likely that I'll put in a user options method, valet method in the plugin architecture, so they can convey options to those pages as well, for like sites that want to have, a bunch of users and have people customize profile pages or something like that. Who knows? Sky's the limit. But the bottom line is, with WordPress, there's lots of places you might want to inject options if you're a plugin developer, but there's no predefined pathways for doing that. Like there really are no predefined pathways. They just say, well, we got a bunch of hooks and filters. Good luck. Go do your thing. And, plenty of developers have leveraged those over the years, but there's not like a unified system for talking to these things and saying, hey, do this here, do that there. If you surveyed 100 plugins that do this stuff, you would find many different ways of doing it. So there's no standardized way to do it. That makes, troubleshooting very difficult. That creates lots of problems in updates and stuff. Like, WordPress could update and it's going to break some percentage of these implementations. Some percentage will be unaffected. Like, that's a really haphazard landscape. So what PageMotor seeks to do is with plugins, which are, again, I've referenced this before in other videos, but plugins are your way to do anything. With WordPress, you're used to like a custom functions file or another type of functions file. Like that's your kind of inroad for doing anything with the website. Well, plugins are your way for doing that with PageMotor, and the PageMotor plugin architecture is extremely standardized. Anything you want to do, there is a valet method that you will use to do it. And that creates a standardized pathway for all the things you want to do. And it makes it really easy if you're looking at your code to like know what does what. Like, oh, this is site options. Oh, this is box options. It all makes total sense. But the real clincher that comes out of that patternized organization is that AIs can cook with this. Like we are not far from a natural language coding model here where you say, I want some site options. I want some content options. I need this to be a multi-instance box. And boom, it's going to spool it all up. And you're already going to have like this great skeleton framework for your output. You'll even be able to say, and I don't think we're too far from this either. You'll even be able to say, I need this plugin to generate an SCSS file that references variables from the active theme, that also references some of these site options or even box options. There's ways to do that as well. That references some of these options and creates dynamic SCSS output based on the user's input. And it will write that CSS file automatically to the system. It will be incorporated into the theme architecture, and the theme will actually include that in its SCSS compilation. And then the plugin will be totally integrated into the current design with the current options set for that plugin. Like that is a deep, deep level of integration that up to now, agencies and developers do a ton of manual work to make possible. And not only do they do a lot of detailed manual work to do this, to deliver this result to clients, there's so many things, so many touch points that they have to address that there's actually no way for them to do it 100% accurately. With this system I'm describing, the results can be 100% accurate. Every value that needs to be touched can be touched. And with the the way it all works and the way AI can be leveraged to do it, like the results can actually be perfect and instant, which is just crazy. So that is so much promise for the future. The PageMotor plugin architecture totally rocks. Like I said, we've already got 3 plugins built by AI in a week. This landscape is only going to unfold more. Think of it like a flower. The flower is just beginning to bloom, and when it blooms, the petals open up, and it's this huge, amazing thing, and it's beautiful. That is what is happening right now. Let's see. So I said Claude is the best coding AI, and I want to see if I can share a code window to show you that. So let me see if I can do that. I gotta open it first. Yeah, so we're switching gears from that little plugin exploration, and I want to talk about some of the results from the AIs. All right, but first I've got to go to the bathroom. I'm going to take a quick bathroom break. I'm going to come back, and hopefully I will be able to share this code screen. That is the big upgrade from last week. So stay tuned. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Hope you didn't miss me. All right, so let's see if I can share this window Stop sharing. We'll share a new one. Oh, no, we want a window. We want this. Please work. Oh, it looks like it's working. Can you guys see this code? Yes in the chat. Y in the chat. Thumbs up in the chat. Anyone? Anyone? Yes. Okay, nice. Nice. We're up and running. All right. So as far as I know, and I don't think Ken's on here, which is too bad, but I'm going to give it my most educated guess as to how all this stuff happened. But I think he's mostly created this plugin with AI. He used Claude. Claude's pretty impressive. Okay. I'm going to go through some stuff that stands out. I'm going to scroll down the file a little bit. I mean, there's so this plugin uses JavaScript to process forms and things like that. It has a whole Ajax component that is in beta that I didn't demonstrate, but I have looked at the mechanics of it. It writes JavaScript. I'm just going to look at this real quick. It writes JavaScript that doesn't require jQuery. And so one of the things I have found in almost every piece of software that's shipped that includes bare bones JavaScript without jQuery, it is so verbose. It's just like, it's crushingly verbose. A lot of the references are, it uses camel case. They're long. Like, you really have to know a lot of, if you want to be a pro operator with this, you really have to know a lot of like specific phrasing. And I don't love that. I've always kind of shied away from that because jQuery is like intuitive, whereas bare bones JavaScript seems very verbose. Now, obviously, if you work with a bunch, you learn to get it. But I have always used jQuery because of that. Like, I could intuit what I need to do with jQuery, whereas the basic JavaScript, I'm like Googling all the freaking time to figure out what I need to do. But Claude writes this really nice, concise, bare bones JavaScript. Like, this is a pretty impressive file here, and it uses for Ajax methods or Ajax posting and all this stuff. It uses the fetch API, which is really the way we're supposed to do it these days. And it's just really nice. Like, all this stuff just worked with PageMotor, which is super impressive to me. And the JavaScript is good. It does a lot of, pretty much necessary things, procedural things that you have to do whenever if you're going to do Ajax, you got to do this, that kind of thing. And if you're dealing with input fields, you need to validate the input fields. You need to do this kind of, stuff that kind of is a pain in the butt to do. If you're like a developer having to roll this stuff out and you don't have a framework for it, Claude just cranked this out in a way that is pretty darn acceptable. And, it's really good. Really good. So that was impressive. We'll go down here. I don't know, and that's why I wish Ken was here. He could say one way or the other. But I believe he trained Claude on either one or a few of the plugins that exist in the PageMotor core. Now, what is worth mentioning about this is that all the plugins in the PageMotor core are very simple compared to this one. This one does way more than any single plugin in the PageMotor core does. There's bits and pieces of what you see here in the PageMotor core, but nothing leverages all these valet methods and stuff to this extent. Like, for example, this method here registers JavaScript to the PageMotor environment. All this does is, so if you're familiar with WordPress, we had something called it's not enqueue scripts, it's register scripts. So what you do is you register JavaScript to the active environment. And you say, hey, make this script available for use. But that doesn't put it into use. It just makes it available for use. And then down the line, later in the run sequence of the program, something else can pull up and say, hey, use this registered JavaScript file, output it on the page. We're going to need it right now. So this method registers JavaScript. And I do have a few versions. I mean, there's a couple of examples of that in the PageMotor core, but Claude did that, no sweat. And I don't, it's not like, so we didn't have like a documentation page, a published documentation page to refer to here. The only thing Claude could have gone off of is anything Ken seeded it with, and the only thing he could have seeded it with is a couple of these bare bones plugins that exist in the PageMotor core. So with that little of an input basis, Claude was able to intuit this and do it perfectly. So I'm impressed by that. I think, I wouldn't expect it to get it right like this straight away, but it did. And there's some other things it did that I'm going to show you that I'm like, that's pretty good. It's doing conditional. So this method, JS, the JavaScript method, this tells PageMotor what scripts to include on the current page. But there's a caveat here. This method only runs if the plugin is included on the current template. So that ensures there's no cross-pollination, no unwanted outcomes of stuff appearing on pages where it doesn't belong. This ensures that does not happen. But within this method, the JavaScript that ultimately displays is dependent upon the options that have been set for this plugin. So Claude was able to figure that out and say, well, if this is happening, then include this script. If it's, otherwise don't include it. And so it does that. It compiles the scripts that it needs and only spits out exactly what it needs, which is great. I mean, a long lingering problem with WordPress is that any plugin that does something significant, requires a bunch of JavaScript or a bunch of CSS, it really just barfs out everything it needs on all pages of your website, because it's really, really difficult and sometimes impossible, depending on the end user's environment, to nail that down to only what is bare bones necessary for the current page. But this architecture in PageMotor makes it possible. And you add this extra little layer of processing here, like Claude has done, to say, oh, if this is happening, we're not going to need that script or whatever. And then boom, you have the ability to only spit out exactly what you need, exactly when you need it, which is so crucial for performance. That is just such a huge win for optimization overall. Obviously, this is the way things should work. Claude nailed that. So that's amazing. Another one, SESS includes. There's not too many examples of that. I think there's one example of that in the PageMotor core. Claude nailed it. No problem. Perhaps Ken did this, just following the pattern from above, but I wouldn't be surprised if Claude was able to get that as well after everything else. These site options, there's an array format that PageMotor uses to define options. And this is a PHP-based array format to define any options you want included in a form or something like that. So if we have I showed you options pages before, to use the GDPR or not, to have the text message field, all that stuff. Those things, you can define those in the PageMotor core through this array format. And so here we have a type, it's a text input. Here's the label. Here's a tooltip. Here's the width of the input field. This one's a select option. Got a label, got a tooltip. We've got options. It defines an array of options. So if the options in a select thing, when you hit the drop down selector, there's two options there. This one's defined two options, yes or no. This one's text. This one's another select, more text. So this little language, this array format for PageMotor, is not published yet. It's not documented, but it does exist in many places within the PageMotor core already. So Ken could have seeded it in that manner by using a plugin that does this a little bit. But Claude was able to pick up on that and spit out a site options array. The implications of that are huge. Here's an HTML options array. Same thing. It's just different method, different valet method to specify where, a different place where it goes when it interacts with the software. Like this is going to appear in a different UI than the site options. Site option, I showed you examples of the other ones. So site options are here, HTML options are here, box options are here, content options are there, plugin options that are specific to the current theme, those are in a different place. A lot of different places where these things can appear, but the language that you speak to deliver those options is the same. We only say it belongs in this location or that location. So it's a unified design language for that, or unified language for delivering those options as well. There's a couple of caveats in there. Content options work a little differently. It's just got an extra layer of definition. But bottom line is all the options work the same everywhere, which is key. That's the way it needs to work. Imagine if WordPress were like that. Like if every time you ever wanted to add like a new UI page or options to the admin or something like that, you knew exactly what to do because you were doing the exact same thing every time, regardless of where you were. Like WordPress doesn't even use the same markup. If you have options on the like a category, add category page, those are marked up differently than the main categories page where you've got like a quick option to add a new category or something like that. There's like a quick edit and a main edit, and those two aren't even identical. And then you go over to the content editor in WordPress. You've got the boxes underneath with some options. Those are called post meta boxes. That markup is totally different. And then if you want your plugin to have an options page, well, there's not even a way to do that. There is a way to do that. You have to set up a hook and make it work on a certain URL on the WordPress admin. Then you have to deliver your options page. It doesn't give you any tools to do that. There is no like language to speak to it to say, hey, give me these options. None of that stuff exists. None of it exists. So that is putting a lot of faith in plugin developers, but it's also putting a lot of work on their plate that like doesn't need to be there. If it speaks a unified language like PageMotor does here, not only is that whole process way easier, way more straightforward, it can actually be done by any sort of pattern recognition machine, which is AI. All right, let's see. So here's an interesting thing. We're in the HTML method, and this was kind of the initial thing that impressed me the most about Claude. So boxes, if a plugin expresses itself as a box, it has an HTML output method. And that way, when the template reaches this point, it runs the HTML method for that plugin and says, hey, give me your output. There is, if you notice this depth equals 0 parameter, PageMotor passes around a depth parameter. And that depth parameter says how many tab indentations are we into the HTML markup. It does this so it can maintain proper tabbing in the HTML source. So that way, when you go and look at an uncompressed HTML source, you have a really good idea what's going on. You can see what belongs with what. You see this very nice tabbed structure, which is the way we're supposed to write HTML. But obviously that hasn't been happening for the last 15, 20 years because everything's been a damn mess. But if you have a properly tabbed HTML source, you can kind of grok what's happening just by looking at it. So I like to maintain that. PageMotor includes a way to maintain that through this depth parameter. But the way we do that in your HTML method is we say tab equals string repeat. This is a tab character /t, and then depth. And it says repeat this /t character for a tab space for however many pieces of depth we have. If the depth is 3, it's going to repeat that 3 times. So tab then will be equal to 3 tab spaces. Okay. And then when we deliver the HTML output, when we echo the HTML output, which is what the HTML method is ultimately supposed to do, echo some HTML output, we include the tab. The basic tab is the starting depth. And then we add additional tab spaces as needed to ensure that the indentation is maintained. Now, you don't have to do this. You can just skip it and say, screw it, I don't care, and just have your plugin do some output. That's fine. But I like to maintain the integrity of the HTML source, so I do this. And Ken's, fed, I guess, a couple of plugins from PageMotor to the AI, and the AI just like intuitively knew to do this and knew how to augment it with these extra tab spaces and everything. Like it got it. And I'm kind of blown away by that because I feel like it's nuanced. You don't see this like I'm not aware of too many examples of this or any, frankly, in software that Claude would have been trained on to like recognize this and be like, oh, I know what to do here. I see this everywhere. I see this pattern elsewhere. No, I don't see this pattern elsewhere. But, it's pretty clear how it works if you look at the code, but still Claude was able to pick up on this and did it. And the output from the Forms plugin is perfectly tabbed and indented. And I just wouldn't expect that. That kind of blew me away. Like I was like, Claude, all right, props. That is, that's a great result. Like, one of the challenges with code bases like PageMotor and systems like this over time is things become a mess as the ecosystem grows. It gets larger. People, sloppily attach stuff to the core software. There's development teams that don't involve the original founder or whatever, and it's hard to maintain the vision. So you do things like these half measures, like establish coding standards. Like, okay, we want to make sure it's all written like this. But coding standards are different than procedural standards. Procedural standards say, hey, if we are doing this pattern, we must do it in this specific way because this is repeated elsewhere in the software. And that way we can identify, oh, this is functionally the same as that. Procedural standards are way better than stylistic standards. Procedural standards are hardcore. The tabbing is sort of an example of that. And I love how this indicates or suggests that as PageMotor grows and as the plugin ecosystem grows, we actually can maintain some semblance of order across all those properties, even third-party properties, which is really crucial because the whole ecosystem is going to thrive off of these third-party plugins that people develop. I can't make everything. That's not even the idea. And so the fact that Claude can do this suggests that Claude can also, and also the way the options and stuff work, that's all standardized. It suggests that it really is possible to have a whole lot of unified processes and patterns across an entire ecosystem, not just in the core, not just if the founder's working on the code, but indeed for everybody who interfaces with it. And I think at some point, not too distant future, it'll be possible to have AI generate a plugin and then have that AI ask another AI agent, say, hey, can you make sure this adheres to the PageMotor pattern standards? And it can go through and smooth that out as well. Like, this looks like, okay, tabbed indentation, who cares? But the implications are much greater than that. So, Claude looks really good. I'm excited. That's significant stuff for down the line stuff as we look ahead. Oh, dang. Ken says he believes this work is of such importance that he's pausing other projects to focus solely on developing PageMotor plugin for the next 2 weeks. That is amazing. You don't have to do that. But I think the real hidden message here is this is fun. And having to work on other stuff that involves WordPress and torturous work is no longer fun. And therefore, it is really hard to tolerate. That's certainly a boat I'm in right now. Going back to the Paradise versus Favela thing, I am enjoying my time in Paradise, gang. I do not want to go back to the Favela at all. It's soul crushing to even think about the proposition. But I love it, Ken. I love it. I love what you did with the Forms plugin so far. I can't believe you're on version like 3.0.100. It's blowing my mind. This is really, really good stuff. Now, let's see if there's anything else in here. So that was basically the patternized stuff I noticed from Claude. It does some other stuff, some functional stuff that's smart that I don't often see in WordPress plugins, but it's broken out little procedures that it's going to use over and over again. It's broken those out into tidy little methods within the the Forms plugin itself. It's doing some sophisticated, pretty good stuff. It does some things I don't love. I don't love this HTML notation, but it actually works. It's fine. You're just not going to get the tabbing. Oh, it actually included the tabbing. So maybe that's pro stuff. I wish it looked prettier though. That's why I don't use it. But there's something to that. That's what I'm seeing too. So the AI has kind of suggested a couple different ways of doing things, or that just by reading through, I'm like, maybe I should reconsider my approach to this thing based on the way the AI is doing it. Like, it does some stuff that I've been coding forever, so I'm very patternized in what I do, and I kind of do the same things. If I'm dealing with this, then this is how I'm going to do it. But that's not always the only way to do things. And I've seen with the AI, some of these things, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot you could do it that way. Maybe I should reconsider this. So I can tell that interfacing with this stuff over time is going to improve everything. Really, really cool. I don't know if there's anything else worth showing here. I'm just going to scroll through. This is a significant plugin. It's like almost 1,000 lines of code. Sending notification email. Anyway, I like it though because it writes pretty clean code. I mean, if we compare this to something that's in the WordPress core, this is way cleaner. Way cleaner. So if WordPress were to be rewritten with AI, it would instantly be way better than it is. But using the AI plus the PageMotor standards, going to be premium. Going to be premium. Like this is already nice. Like I love this, and it is able to be this nice because of the whole system that is set up by PageMotor. So that is winning. All right, so to me. All right, let me see what the next item on the agenda was. Okay, yeah, we're gonna switch gears real quick because this is good. This is a good change of pace. So I say here, bricks or blocks. Like, what is the future of developer friendly environments for creating pages, complex HTML output, whatever? So for the uninitiated, bricks are a name that there's a WordPress plugin called like Bricks Builder, I think, which is like a sort of like a page builder, but you define some patterns. Like maybe you have a pattern to create a hero image in HTML output, and that thing is a brick, and then you would deploy your brick. I'm going to use the brick on this template. I'm going to use the brick on that template, or I'm going to use the brick in this context or that context or whatever. It's a reusable component. These are good. As a general idea, these are great. And then I don't know if that's strictly a Gutenberg thing, though. Like, I don't know if it only interfaces with Gutenberg or if it goes outside that, if you can define your bricks separately. I don't know. I don't use that stuff. I don't know. And then another one is blocks. That's the WordPress. Gutenberg is the WordPress block editor. And so you create blocks for things, and you create a block for a hero image. You could create a block for, blocks can be as general or as specific as you like. So meaning like a block could be, a huge structure that's a nested HTML structure with like 30 different divs and containers and stuff and like images and all kinds of stuff. It can be like that, or it can just be like a one paragraph of output. It can be very simple or, very specific and like this huge structure. There's no limits there. But the problem is they've shoved all that stuff into the WordPress editor that everybody uses. I used this analogy last week, but like Susie in HR, who's just got to update the website, doesn't need to see this crap. She doesn't need to know it exists. She doesn't need to be thinking about these options. She doesn't need to be able to click on these things and possibly screw anything up. She doesn't need to know. She wants to write as if she were writing an email. And we are giving her like this computer assembly with all these knobs and buttons like she's running the damn Apollo mission in 1970. It's stupid. It's absolutely stupid. As a generalized design motif, this is the wrong decision. So there might be some merit to block and brick-based things, and I think there are, and that's the whole point of this little micro discussion here. I think there's merit there, but I think there's a right and a wrong way to do it. And the Gutenberg thing, just cramming it all into one place, not it. And even the way you have to program with Gutenberg, it's torturous with the JavaScript. Like everybody groans about it, and they should. I showed you something simple with the PageMotor architecture with the plugins and stuff. You say where you want your options. You define a standardized, universal options array format. You give it that, and then boom, they appear in different places. They all just work. The whole system just works. The block editor for WordPress stinks compared to that. Like it's way more complicated than that and requires you to write this JavaScript code that's pretty torturous. Not great. So with that rant out of the way, let's look. I can only describe this for you and say, hey, imagine this. Okay. But that's what we're going to do. So imagine this. We're going to go into the theme editor. Now, the way this works is that every box or container that has been defined across all templates is available here in this drop-down selector, which you cannot see since when I expose the select element, you don't actually see that in the video, which is a quirk, I guess. I don't love that, but I can select the stuff that's been defined here. So I'll select something so you can see it. Like there's a byline container that goes with the page template that's been defined. It's got a couple options associated with it. Some managerial stuff for the admin. And I can select that and I could deploy that in the template. But if we look at this, there's nothing inside. And so I'll remove this real quick. We'll go to this header element now to look at this. If I look at the header on this page, there is something inside. There's a container in it that's called header also. It goes with the header. And then inside that container is a box called PageMotor header, which outputs the header on the front end of the site. It outputs a little PageMotor logo and then the title. Nothing fancy. But if I were to go to a new template, I'll do that real quick. We'll create a new custom template. We'll create this template. When you create a new template, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. Now, I could copy from an existing template. I could say copy from the page template, and it'll make an exact copy of that, and I can start with that as a base. That's pretty nice. That's pretty nice. But it would be really cool if I could instead deploy this entire header structure. The section on the outside, the container within it, and then the PageMotor header box within that. That would be a block. That would be a block. Now, the way this theme works is called the attention theme. The way this theme works, this is a component that is like universal. Like you're going to want this probably on every template. And so that makes sense to be defined as a block within this theme. Same thing goes for the footer. If we look down here, we've got a container within the footer. This is all necessary to make the design be able to do what it does. You can't just have like this thing, this outer section is a div. It's just one div in the resulting HTML markup. This container inside it, it's another div nested inside it with a class of container. And the CSS styles that are defined in the theme, with that combination of elements, they're nested that way. It results in a certain thing that makes the layout squeeze and expand based on the width of the browser, makes it mobile responsive, all that stuff. This is the minimum that's necessary to do it. And then we got the footer, the text box inside it. But this thing, like individually, neither one of these pieces really does what it's supposed to do. Like it's only really valid if we have the section with the container nested within it, and then something nested within that. Like we don't really have a footer until we have all three of these things. So I think of the footer, and you probably do too, as a single thing, or I think of the header as a single thing, but the reality is the header is a single thing that's comprised of three components. Same with the footer. Those, when you see that, you are looking at a candidate for a block. A block is all that stuff together treated as one thing. I create the footer block, drag that into the template. Suddenly this whole display is simpler. You don't see three nested things. You just see header block, nav block, footer block, potentially even content block. But then there could be different, there could be a flexible block. Imagine this, where it's this content thing. So we got content. This one's really tortured. We got the outer section. We got the container within it to make the layout responsive and do all this stuff. We've got a content div, which is necessary if we're going to have a sidebar and we're going to have a dynamic design that can switch between modes, like show a sidebar, don't show a sidebar. Sidebar's down here. It doesn't actually display right now. There's nothing in it. And then there's a page container inside the content that says, hey, we're rendering this, pick out the content, the content from the database is available. Let's display that inside this page container. We got title, content, author, date, potentially. Other plugins can be added to display other things relevant to the content. So this is a candidate for a slightly different type of block, but you can imagine at least these three items as some sort of outer block, content block. And then you would put unique elements for only this template inside it. So this presentation could be consolidated in a way that's much easier for everybody to understand through the use of blocks. Now, let's take this even farther. Let's go over here to the content editor. Now, right now, if you edit the homepage, for example, you've got a content editor and you can just write your content in there. This is simple enough. It's straightforward for kind of what we expect for websites now. But, if you've been using WordPress, you've been using Elementor or Beaver Builder or the Bricks Builder or something like that, the modality here has changed. So you don't actually do this really. You don't write some content in an editor. You put some blocks together, basically. And that is the essence of the page builder phenomenon in WordPress. There's good ways and bad ways to do it. Some ways massively overcomplicated, but like that's the essence of it. We want to do that. We want to use predefined blocks and then just deploy them. And that's how we build our pages with a page builder. Instead of having this as one place to input content, imagine if we could deploy some blocks, not even like not the header and nav and footer blocks like that, just within the content to build our content itself. We could have a block that, for example, holds our output, our opt-in form. You could have a block that is a pitch for a product. You could have a block that is something like, a presentation of 3 things across for product features. You could have a block that displays cards, if you're familiar with Focus cards from my Focus software for WordPress. You could have a block that displays anything. Could be a hero image, could be a top section, could be an image with a form to input. It could be a freaking button. It could be anything. And these block structures, that's what people want with a page builder. They want this complex thing. They want to be able to dump this complex thing in there right away. They don't want to say like, okay, I need this div, I need that div. I put them all together like we saw in the template editor. That's too much. That's not a page builder. That's not good enough. But something like this block modality I'm talking about would be really good. So what I am going to do eventually, this is not like the next thing I'm working on or anything, but and imagine, well, I'm gonna make the home page, like you'll be able to, if you're doing your home page in PageMotor, you'll be able to click on a thing that says, oh no, let me use the block builder. And you'll switch to the block builder. It will have stuff, you'll be able to drag your blocks over and build your page. And then like each block can define its own area where you edit content within it. And each little area of content would have this kind of editor inside it where you could choose your formatting and do all this fancy stuff. But there'd be a lot of those areas, conceivably, on one piece of content. Okay. And that is how we would build those complex pages with the, in the PageMotor way, by using these types of blocks. And they could be, the blocks that you use for content are going to be different than the blocks that we use in the larger theme in the theme editor, but we're going to be carrying that pattern over. Like we use blocks here, we use blocks there, because blocks make sense as these meta structures. And I think that's the way that stuff is going to work. So that is on the horizon, but that will be page building done right. It's not going to be some torturous thing. It'll be a very clear operational mode. Like I switch over to this, I can see all the places I need to edit content. Susie from HR are going to be able to do this easily. Not going to mess anything up. That's going to make a lot of sense. So that will be a whole new UI to like create these content blocks. But like I think a theme is going to convey its own core content blocks, and then plugins will be able to add those too. That's really the thing. So plugins will be able to say like, okay, Ken's Forms plugin going to be able to say, hey, add this form block, and you'd be able to drag that over into the page builder, and people will be able to put that together on the fly like that. So they wouldn't ever have to go into the template editor and add the forms box. And that's a larger thing. Like I want to make it so that really nobody has to go into the template editor. It makes sense that themes need to have some basic templates, and there needs to be a way to define all that stuff to create it as data. And the template editor makes sense for that and is great and can be better with the enhancement of blocks. But ideally, I want to get to a point where normie users never have to go into the template editor. They never have to go into the template editor. I see that as being critical. Quick rant, I've seen people whine about this stuff for 20 years. And really the last 15, just constant whining. Oh, I have to do some CSS. Oh, stab me in the heart. Got to do the easiest freaking thing in the world. It's not even a language. Oh, I can't do CSS. I don't do that. I don't do code. I get that people don't want to do PHP and probably should not be doing PHP. That's fine. I think we can all agree on that. CSS, not a big deal. But, people whine about that. Of course, they'll whine about the template editor. I don't understand what's going on here. Okay, gang, I get it. Like, we'll keep you out of there. I'll do whatever I can to keep you out of there. But my God, people whine about anything. Next they'll be whining about having to do a page builder thing to build a page that's customized. Or maybe they'll whine about having to use a word processor at some point. Like, oh, shouldn't AI be doing this for me? Just read my mind, spit out my thoughts in a way that sounds like me. It's ridiculous. But anyhow, I want to give people the tools to do stuff in a delightful and easy way. And whenever there's any step in the process that's kind of like, ugh, I want to remove that. Like I do. I want to make it easy for you. I want to make it as simple, as intuitive, and as delightful as possible to do all the normal stuff you want to do with a website. And I'm talking whether you're Susie in HR, you're just a hobbyist, or you're a hardcore developer. Like no matter where you are in the process or what process you're undertaking, I really want to make this easy and provide as much leverage as I can so you can be a killer operator. I want to up your game as much as I can. And when we do that, we actually improve the quality of the results. And that's really the end goal here. We want to improve the patternization and the quality of the results, because that way at any point, now or in the future, if we want to make changes or we want to go and review things, like we have a very solid standard of what we know we should be seeing and finding, and we can figure out exactly what's wrong. We see how to fix it, all that stuff. Every process gets easier in the future if we dedicate to making this stuff right now. So it's just upside all the way down the line there. Let's see here. What are we seeing? We're seeing this. So we'll start. Are we seeing me? Yeah, we're seeing me. Okay. Let's move on to the next item. So bricks, blocks, there is a future for those things. There is a future for those things. But if they are not implemented in a way that is tasteful and acceptable to the current user, and there's different types of current users, then it's not going to really work. It's going to create problems down the line. And I mentioned this before. I want to mention it again before I wrap up this little part of the discussion. But the way WordPress has continued to evolve is that people are now saying, okay, we see that we can't please everybody. And a lot of these tools, these builders and whatnot, have tried to please everybody, but they end up sucking badly for one side or the other. They suck for end users or they suck for developers. And so one prominent plugin that's getting ready to launch soon is called HWP. And HWP has said, screw it. We're not going to worry about the end user at all. We're going to make this easy for developers. And this is actually a very wise decision, because they want to make money. Agencies and developers are the ones who are going to be spending the money to get this leverage. They can charge a high price for this premium product because that's their customer base. It's not end user who needs, like an $87 cap on this to be able to stomach it. And that works for them. But the problem is they're committing to one side or the other. And so, yeah, it's great to have a developer tool, but then how are people going to edit the site? Well, we're just not going to worry about that. We're just not going to worry about that. You should be engaging, retaining an agency or developer to do this stuff for you to help you out along the way. Well, I don't like that. I don't agree. I do think that's about the best you can do with WordPress, but PageMotor exists because I had enough of saying, well, that's about the best you can do with WordPress. We can do better all the way down the line. So that's what we're going to do. But the idea of bricks and blocks or whatever, that is going to persist. It's a good idea. All right. So I already talked about all the places where plugins can insert options, but I do want to add a little mental shift to the way I approach this or the way I speak about this. So I want to start saying, I want you to think, well, these are not all the places you can insert options for your plugins into PageMotor. These are all the places AI can insert options for you. Okay, these are where AI can do it for you. AI can do this stuff for you, and you might as well have it do it. Because then you can get into much more rapid prototyping and testing. Like Ken's already, like I said, I've made the joke a couple times, but he's on like version 1 million of his Forms plugin already, and it's a weekend. Like, that's incredible. And you can refine software so much faster. You can make it better, faster. You can add more functionality faster under this type of environment. Next thing. I like this. Okay. So the basic question here is, should you use Stripe for your payments, or should you use PayPal, or should you use something else? And I love this. I love this topic because I used PayPal forever. And then, of course, PayPal fell under bad graces among the general population. I don't even remember what the catalytic event was, but I feel like it was like 2020 or something. It was a while back. And everybody started hating PayPal. And there's lots of reasons to hate PayPal, I think. But, I've been using them for a long time. I have a lot of reasons I like PayPal. They charge me cheaper fees because I've done $1 zillion to them over the years. They work everywhere but a few notable countries, Egypt, India, a few others. That has been problematic. That stinks. And they've changed the rules along the way, so I've kind of had to dance around that. So I don't love that. But they just worked. They don't hold any of my money anymore. So whatever I make, I can get right away. That's nice. And the overall fee structure for them is cheaper than it is for me with any other processor. So, okay, there's a reason for a use case for PayPal, but people hate it. So that's not great. Is that affecting my sales? Is that affecting my ability to close and get checkouts? I don't know. Maybe it is. And so Stripe is an alternative. What's good about Stripe? Well, Stripe is kind of developer driven. They've got decent APIs. Their stuff that integrates into your into your checkout pages and stuff is really good. It's nice. It looks sophisticated. So I like that. Their fee structure kind of stinks. I mean, it depends. It depends on where you are and how much volume you're doing. But okay, whatever. They do automatic deposits into your account. So if you're running stuff through Stripe, you gotta, let's say I made a sale today, I'll probably get that money in 3 days. I didn't have to think about it. Didn't have to do anything. That's nice. They don't hold it in some account, and who knows? I don't know if PayPal does anything with their holdings, but it's kind of feels more honest since Stripe's just paying me out, on an ongoing basis. And so should you use Stripe or PayPal, or what's the deal? So I have Stripe and PayPal integrated on DIYthemes.com. PayPal is the default. And I have a little select option. You can say, do you want to pay with PayPal or Stripe? And you choose which one. You use whichever one you like. I'm I think this is good. I'm giving people the option. And indeed, I have noticed that has worked for people from Egypt, from India, from places where PayPal is banned. They know to look for Stripe. It seems so easy. I'm giving you the option. Just choose one. Choose the one you want. But the reality is people don't even see the damn option. People don't even see the option. It's madness. So if you have a checkout form and let's say your customers are Americans, here's what Americans know. They either have an opinion about PayPal or don't. The ones who do have an opinion are I hate PayPal. So they see PayPal, they're nope, I'm out. They weren't thinking, oh, there's probably an alternative payment provider offered here. They, when you go into a coffee shop, you don't think I've got multiple ways to pay, really. You might think I can use Apple Pay or something like this, but you're paying on the Square terminal right there at the register, and that's where you're going to pay. People's modality when they're on a website is this is where you pay. It says PayPal. I don't like PayPal. I'm out. So even though I have the option there, people from the US and the UK and stuff get to that page, they don't like PayPal, they're out. They're out. And so that begs the question, well, and there's one more piece of data here. So with the PageMotor beta, I thought I would put this to the test again. I put my PayPal options first and the Stripe options second. Stripe is winning that war by a little over a 2-to-1 margin. By 2-to-1, more than 2-to-1 ratio, people are opting to use Stripe instead of PayPal. That fascinates me. That shows a very clear preference there that doesn't exist on my DIY theme site where PayPal is the default. I've had Stripe for I think 2 years on DIYthemes.com, and I think I'm up to maybe it depends. I mean, it depends on the month and the renewals and stuff, but I think I'm between 8 and 16% of all transactions running through Stripe. And that suggests to me that DIY Themes is underperforming. And I do have, I get to see people have abandoned the cart, that kind of thing. I have some numbers on that. But that suggests to me that I should probably reorder those options and make Stripe the default because here's who has an opinion about Stripe right now: merchants. If you've been running a store and you've been using Stripe, you might have a strong opinion about Stripe. But from a consumer perspective, I'm not aware of any opinions about Stripe whatsoever. Nobody cares. They like, it's fine. This is where I pay. But people see if PayPal's where I pay, well, I hate PayPal. Sorry, bro. Not buying. So I should reorganize my DIY themes checkout page and maybe even get rid of the PayPal option altogether based on that data. I'm not sure if Stripe's banned. That's kind of be the thing. Like I haven't done enough research. Like, are they banned? Or do they not allow certain countries to participate? I don't know. But fascinating stuff there. Like I probably need to redo my DIY themes checkout page, like I said, to favor Stripe over PayPal. And I'll definitely be thinking about this moving forward. Like, I don't know. I'm an American. A lot of my audience is American. Like, should I get rid of PayPal? Maybe. I don't love that. Like, I'm not trying to like sit here and steer everybody away, but psychological ramifications of this are interesting, right? So, I don't know. I think it's just worth discussing. If you guys do an e-com, maybe don't put PayPal on there at all. I don't know. And Ken says our Stripe integration keeps customers on sites through the entire process. Same here with GRT calculator and DIY themes. Obviously, I've just used some buttons like payment link buttons for Stripe for PageMotor right now because the implications of having an e-com thing that has a product and user tie-in and all this stuff, like that's way down the line for now. I would have loved that, but I didn't want to put the website on hold or not use PageMotor to run it, so that was my only option. But definitely want to keep people on the page during the checkout. Never want to be sending people off. The UI break, like I'm on your site, I see your branding, and then suddenly I'm elsewhere. That is no bueno. That is not good. I'm sure there's some loss in there. Unless it's for a product people really want, like some of these high ticket guys that do like a $3,000 info product or something, you could send them off to a page. If you're going to buy a $3,000 product, you don't care where you got to buy that. Like you're committed at a level that's beyond. But if you're selling some smaller stuff where people can be like, I don't know, you definitely want to keep them on the site, keep them engaged in that process. Yeah, Ken says the payment form appears directly within our Gravity forms, creating a smoother experience. I've seen that. I like that. I like the way those work. That is good stuff. Okay, so the big thing I wanted to share this week was obviously the plugins that people made, my initial impressions of how AI handled that and what that maybe means for the future. I also wanted to share my idea about the block-based building augmentation that is going to occur. And then my other main objective was to get some feedback from you guys, from my beta peeps, about anything that like a wish list for the PageMotor core, answer any questions, that kind of thing. You can share what you're working on. Like I'm excited about like anything you guys have done. I'm just like delighted, totally thrilled. Like, okay, Casey dropped his OpenCraft plugin. I'm like, yes, let me check this out. I'm loving that. Loving that. Stripe Ken also says that Stripe offers a more data-rich dashboard with powerful analytics and reporting tools. Totally agree. It's particularly strong for subscription management and recurring payments. I've noticed that. I love that. PayPal is like a maze to get through to even figure out what the hell's going on with the transaction. It's such a bum deal, which is too bad. Because DIY themes has been wedded to that for 100 years, and that's sort of just become my default modality. But I've got Stripe exclusively on the GRT calculator, and obviously now using that for PageMotor. I think I'm just going to switch over to that exclusively for all the reasons cited here. Better checkout integrations, more professional looking stuff, better user experience, better experience on my end as the account manager. It just seems better. And like I said, this is probably like a larger tip that can be applied in other arenas. But like if consumers have a negative opinion about something, and I hate this, because it implies me. It's like, well, Chris, you've had a lot of people have negative opinions about you over the years. They might as well go somewhere else if they're following your advice right now. But if, consumers have a negative opinion about something like PayPal, probably not worth using it. Because a lot of people, some percentage of people are going to see that, not realize there's an alternative, be turned off and leave. You lose the sale. So that sucks. But no more PayPal, I think. With that said, Casey's going to fix the OG Breadcrumbs plugin based on my suggestions. I'm going to look at that today. I looked over Ken's plugin a little bit earlier. I'm going to look at yours this afternoon and see what I think about all that. I want to see how closely it matches what I believed the core Breadcrumbs plugin was going to look like. I think it's actually going to be pretty close. It should be. I mean, there's only so many ways to do this. Casey says he loves the feedback I'm given to make the things work better. Oh, dude, I'm so obsessed with this stuff. Like, like I said, I want to see what the AIs are doing. I want to see how you guys are kind of managing this and like the way things are conveyed. And because I built pathways into the PageMotor architecture, the plugin architecture, the wider architecture, and I know that like, okay, this delivers this result, I can guarantee this result. Like I'm going through, I want to make sure that it adheres to all that stuff. For a multitude of reasons, but also because I want to make sure it all works. You know, like, is this working as expected? What does this look like? And like now that I'm reviewing these AIs a little bit and seeing all that, like, oh, okay, I see that there's a lot of benefits here and a lot of leverage. I want to make sure we're squeezing as much out of that as possible. And also, this is critical too. So when you run distributed software like PageMotor, like Thesis, like Focus, like WordPress, when it's distributed out to the masses, you have to be very, very careful about something called breaking changes. Breaking changes are things that you implement, like an update to the software, that causes existing implementations to break. Breaking can mean a number of things, but the worst case scenario, it means like a PHP fatal error and the outcome doesn't render. It doesn't work. Even worse than that, like it tanks the admin. Like a user goes to the admin and can't do anything because there's a PHP fatal error. So breaking changes are a big damn deal. And these breaking changes are really the main thing that creates technical debt in software systems over time. That's the main thing. So you got to avoid breaking changes. And if people are not doing some of these, using these valet methods that are in the PageMotor plugins and stuff like that, like that's getting into the realm of maybe dealing with stuff that I can't manage. I can't predict that there's going to be breaking changes in those areas if you've gone outside the boundaries. So that could happen. But if you stay within the guardrails, I can say with absolute certainty, I can say, oh, since we did this, this is going to affect that. You will need to change this particular thing. So I can offer very specific instructions on how to avoid these things and how to get around these problems. But like I said, if you go outside the guardrails, well, it's the wild, wild west out there. I don't know what anything could be happening. Impossible for me to predict exactly what the impact on you or users is going to be if that's the case. So I want to make sure that we're adhering to that for, that's the larger reason why. Another aspect of these breaking changes that's worth noting, that's, I wish I had done a beta like this with Thesis 2 back in 2012. Like, this is what I should have done. I should have had a focus group and run a beta for who knows how long, because I could have figured out a lot of this stuff. And it's important to do this now. I see it's really smart because during the beta period, I am introducing breaking changes, kind of introducing them left and right, which is unfortunate, but some of this necessary to fix problems that existed before that were kind of masked by certain things. But once they're uncovered, you got to fix these things and move on. And a lot of foundational stuff like database stuff, this can cause breaking changes. Changes to the valet methods, that can cause breaking changes. A lot of stuff can cause them. But yeah, the beta period is really nice because I can introduce breaking changes and I can say, hey, this is the turn, this is the deal. This is what we're working with. It's a super beta and I'm going to be changing stuff rapidly and all my beta peeps understand that. And I love that. I'm so like hype about what's going on and about, the PageMotor beta and about you guys being in there because I feel like I have the freedom to do this stuff that I would otherwise not be able to do with distributed software. I couldn't introduce breaking changes because I see, oh, this needs to happen to make the system better. But under this beta environment, I can do that. Like there's no restrictions. No matter what, I'm going to make the software as good as it can be. If this is what needs to happen, but if this thing causes breaking changes, oh, well, we're going to do it. And the idea of this beta period is to get through, to establish all the things that need to be established so that it will not be necessary to do breaking changes to some of these core architectural pieces in the future. Now, that is wishful thinking. It's probably not going to work out that way, but this beta period is going to allow me to get a lot closer than I would get otherwise, a lot closer to that reality. And I mentioned earlier briefly that breaking changes are the foundation of technical debt in software. That's because you introduce a bunch of code to dance around these negative scenarios so they won't break in certain cases. And then you get yourself into this endless spiral of what is called exception-based code. Exceptions are things that go outside the established patterns. Exceptions create technical debt. Exceptions create more work, more management, more follow-up, just more everything. Exceptions create technical debt. And the worst part about it is you've got to drag along these exceptions and all these accommodations. You've got to drag them along forever, or until you decide to cut the cord and say, okay, everyone who's affected by this now going to have breaking changes on their end. This is one reason why WordPress is such a convoluted monstrosity now. Like they got too far along, got too many users too fast, and had all of these things in the system that were fundamentally broken, but could never be fixed. And indeed had to be danced around for the last 20 years because the alternative was breaking changes, and that's too much to bear. It's been known for a long time that the plugin architecture needed to have like a totally different thing. But the consequence of that was nuking every plugin in existence. Not acceptable, so it's never happened. But right there, they made their bet. That put an end of life on WordPress's relevance. And the end of life has not come up yet, but it is about to with AI. And that's just the reality of the game. And so I'm looking ahead 20 more years from now and thinking, well, I got to make sure that, I cover as many of these bases as possible so I don't have to introduce breaking changes in the future, and I don't have to drag along a lot of stuff to accommodate technical debt. Now, I'm going to have to at some point. That's just the nature of the beast. But by God, I'm going to do my best to plan and test until we get to that point to make sure that this base is as good as it can be and as unencumbered as it can be, because this is what must happen to ensure the longevity and enduring nature of this software. And then at a larger point, this is what preserves the whole ecosystem, like all the plugins that get built around this, all that stuff, like all the work I'm doing now is securing a future for them. So this beta period was a great idea. I didn't know how great an idea it was. I see now it's totally essential, and this is really the main reason why it's essential. I can introduce breaking changes right now and work with you guys. You guys are cool about it, and we're no stress there. And obviously I can message everybody and say like, okay, hey, I screwed this up, so you guys got to, here's what you got to do to fix it. But that's going to go a long way in the future. All right, just so you guys know. Yeah, Casey said, that's why I haven't gone to 2.2 or 0.2.2 yet, based on some of my observations this morning. Yeah, it's only a little bit of stuff, and it's a quick fix, but I feel you. Ken asks, what about dynamic CSS management for plugins, specifically the combination of native dynamic CSS and CSS custom properties integration? Well, there is no custom CSS custom properties integration yet. I probably need to do that. It would just, I guess what I'm wrestling with is it's a little crufty in the sense that the theme defines some design options and some variables. And then it uses the variables, and it uses the design option to figure out what the variable values need to be. And then the variable values change the CSS that the theme outputs. Those variables get referenced in the CSS directly. Okay. CSS custom properties work the same way, except they cannot be accessed. Well, so I could do this. I could just not reference the variables in the CSS, and instead feed those variables into the CSS custom properties, and then just reference the CSS custom properties in the CSS. And that's totally fine. That's totally fine to do. It's just more verbose. I can say X4 if I referencing a variable in the SCSS environment, one of the variables that's set up by the theme. But if I want to reference that same thing with the CSS custom property, I have to say var -- X4. It's just more verbose. It stinks. It increases the size of all the CSS and all that. Obviously, the trade-off might be that this is sort of the way everybody expects to do it now, and that it shows up in Chrome Inspector, and you can kind of like view the history of that variable and trace it all out and everything, and that's really nice. I'm still just sort of wrestling with that. I haven't convinced myself of a totally comfy resolution to that yet. But I think it's got to happen. I think the CSS custom property's got to be in there. But like I said, it would be fed through that variable system, so the variables would still exist because the variables are necessary for the design options to to do stuff and reference things and change things. Let me think about that. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot for me to consider there. I could conceivably do away with variables entirely, I think. But yeah, I mean, you got things like in the custom CSS, like I'll just show this real quick. It's content. I guess this is it. Yeah. So we'll go over here. We're going to look at custom CSS. So over here in the custom CSS, you got this little slide out pane, and it pulls from the variables, and you can just, if I want to put that here, I can just click this, and I clicked it, and it added it over here. So it's real nice. I can see what they all are, and then I can easily reference them in the custom CSS. Like, I think that's really nice. I think that's really nice. I don't know. I think that's really nice. Like, this should be a variable. Wait, is it CEO404 or DEO404? Let's see. Oh, it's D4 2020. Let's not do that. This is the custom PageMotor branding color. Get me tinkering too much while doing this. So anyway, I'm torn. Like, this seems to provide some leverage, and then you go over here in the theme editor to the CSS panel. You got your variables over here. You can drag them over into the code. Obviously, there is no code there, but if there were, you could reference those variables. And these are what I reference in my SCSS. Maybe I can show that, maybe not. Let's see. I'll pull this over. So let's stop sharing this, start sharing this. Oh, window. I get that wrong every time. Here we go. So if we go over and look at, this is some SCSS output from the admin theme. See how I'm referencing X6 there. I like that I can reference those things, and I can go back over to the theme CSS editor and see what the variables are there. It updates. So when you save something like the design options, let's go over and look at that. Here's the design options. When you save the results of these, whatever processing is necessary after these values are saved, those get stuffed into those variables where they can be viewed. You can see what the results were. I think that's really nice. That would be somewhat possible with the CSS custom properties, but it'd just be a little different. I don't know. I know that the larger developer environment has been using CSS custom properties. They're like variables within CSS files. I do see benefits there. I think it's possible that I could work that in with the way all this other stuff works. But I'll just need to figure that out, I guess. But I also think there's merit to those variables and their conciseness, like the ease of reference. I've also got naming conventions with those that are real handy. Like properties I don't really want you to see are underscored. So like if you go back in here, all the non-underscored properties, this is all the stuff you probably want to use in your custom CSS. Everything that's not underscored. So like this one starts the B, scroll up over my head. B call out here is the first underscored variable value. Everything above that is not underscored. This is the stuff you're really going to be referencing in your custom CSS. Like, I like that. That's pretty clever. Everything down here, probably not, but maybe only if you're, hardcore and really understand the system. Otherwise, you've got X1 through X6. These are spatial values based on your currently selected font size and the width of the content column where your primary text is going to be displayed. You've got your content width, your total layout width, some gutters for responsive displays. Got the golden ratio if you want to do any fancy math. Got G1, these are line heights, golden line heights. So you got F1 through F6. These are your 6 font sizes based on your primary font size. This one's 18 pixels. It develops a typographic scale, sizing scale based on that. And then it's got the line heights G1 through G6 that correspond to that. So if you're using font size F3, you should use line height G3 to go with it. Got some borders, custom borders that are established in the design options, background colors, breakpoints for mobile responsiveness, some colors that are established, and these all correspond to values in the design options. So like the way that works is pretty nice. But like I said, I think for larger acceptance, once this is beyond beta, I think people are going to want those custom properties. So I'll have to figure that out. So anyway, all right. I got to go get my son from camp here in a little bit. I think I'm going to wrap it up for today. But trying to think of something I can tell you, like what's on tap for next week, like week 2, what I'm going to do, what are we all going to do? I'm going to probably build out a users tab, a users module here in the admin, so you will be able to add users and even examine your current users within the PageMotor admin. So I'm probably going to do that. And I'll work in the user permissions and stuff throughout the software, like they're not there now. So like if you go to create a piece of content, it just saves the author right now as user number 1, which is your admin user when you signed up. And then it outputs that author as 1 instead of like your name or your username. So I'm going to work that stuff in. There's quite a few references throughout there that I need to kind of tinker with and get that right. I've got a huge development list on the forums, like a punch list of all the stuff I want to do. I mentioned this before, but I really want to get this working. But I see a potential problem. But within the content editor here, you got stuff like callouts and buttons, but I need to work in modular content. So if you've defined modular content under content types, it doesn't just display anywhere on your website. You have to pick. You have to choose some place to display it. You can do that through the template editor. You could select modular content and then drag it over. And I can modify this box so that you can select a particular piece of modular content that you've defined, and I probably will do that. But again, this is not ideal. We don't want end users really having to, I'm thinking ahead. I don't want regular normie end users having to go into the template editor to do things like that. That doesn't make sense. So I've got to figure out a way to get the modular content to display over here, to choose it in the editor and have it just boom, pop out there in the HTML markup. Within the last week, I opened this up so that, actually before the beta even launched, I made it so that forms could be put on here. So like this form wasn't rendering before. I had to open it up and allow more HTML markup and certain attributes to display. So like the input fields and stuff that we see here were not working in the form. Those were not allowed. I had to allow them. And so like another thing that we're used to with modular content on WordPress in the thesis version of modular content there is that you could take like output from ConvertKit now and paste it into a modular content and save it, and it would just work. That content included script tags and HTML tags. Right now, if you were to paste put a script into modular content, it would just get stripped out. And there's some larger security implications from allowing that. And I've only recently learned that WordPress actually does quite a big song and dance here. If you use the text editor, let's see if I can do this. Oh, crap. Why keeps logging me out? If you use the text editor in WordPress, this one, the code, you've got visual or code. If you go to the code editor and put stuff in there, it will allow more stuff than it allows in the visual editor. And somehow it does a little dancer and says, okay, in this instance, these tags are allowed with these attributes, and in this other instance, they're not. So I didn't actually realize it had that level of granularity there. And this code editor actually gets away from the visual editor completely. Like this is tiny MCE. This is not. I didn't realize there was that big of like a hard line distinction there. So, WordPress did that to give people absolute control over the content. And this was like a demand from way back, like 20 years ago. this was desired. Less so now, probably not desired at all at this point. But that's a pretty big concern now with PageMotor because I gotta, that's a real nice capability in modular content. If you could just dump the stuff that Kit gives you in there and then output that within your content via shortcode, that's real nice. So what I may have to do is just, I've already kind of made provisions for shortcode functionality within PageMotor. I may just have to do that. And when you choose to deploy a piece of modular content, it may just deploy the relevant shortcode. I was hoping it would deploy the content itself. So instead of seeing like a shortcode reference, you would actually see what your modular content is. But from a security standpoint, that may not be wise. So I don't know. Or I could just open it up and allow you to do the script tags and say the hell with it. But I'm not sure how we guarantee, how we can protect against like, if some normie is just dumping scripts everywhere, then they would be opening themselves up for cross-site scripting possibilities, which is no good, which is why WordPress disallows that in the basic editor. But again, it's not disallowed in the code editor. So, or at least not with modular content, which is just, it's not doing anything special there. It's not saying, hey, you have to allow this. I didn't make any provisions like that. So I'm not sure what's going on there. And I actually don't know where the like sanity line is with the security thing there. So that's a little bit of a challenge, but bottom line, I got to get modular content working. Maybe I'll do it in 2 steps. I'll get the short codes working first, and then I can deal with the other stuff later. I don't know. But I do want that to happen because modular content opens up a lot of cool possibilities as well. Casey says you can't right click to copy paste. You can use the keyboard to do it, but I see your point. Oh yeah, because it does the link. Well, that's a link. Let's see if we can get a, we'll have to go to a different page real quick. Let's try our test page. So, well, let's see if we copy something, if we can paste. Copy. Yeah, there's no paste option, is there? What about, but I know I can, yeah, you can Control C, Control V, but there is no paste. That's weird, huh? Good notice. I have not noticed that before. Interesting. Sean says he used to stay in the code tab in WP for that reason. Yeah, I still do. Old habits die hard. I know I can get exactly what I want and get the HTML formatted like I want, so I just do that. But you can have, you got the source editor here with PageMotor, but it does some annoying stuff. So like, let's go back to the modular content. Oh wait, this wasn't it. We'll do the email list. If we look at the form here, it doesn't keep my, like I can't, it puts all the inputs on one line. Like I wanted them separated onto different lines. It just continually smushes them together like this into one big ugly div instead of like maintaining a real pretty HTML source. I hate that. That drives me crazy enough that I'll probably try and fix that at some point, which is, that's my life. Anyhow, that's that. So I think that's coming. The users control that. And then I got the development punch list on the forums. So we'll hit all those items eventually. So there it is. All right, gang. I'm going to wrap it up for today. Thanks for being here for the PageMotor Beta Week 1 live stream. There it is. Thanks, guys, for your contributions this week. You've given me you've lit a fire under this thing and really, I don't know, really just amazed me. I've learned some things. I'm just loving the momentum that's going on. I'm loving all this new input. I didn't really imagine it would be like this. So it's been like a Christmas present. I'm loving it. So see you guys in the next live stream. I might do more of these. We're definitely going to do one every Friday. We're going to make this a thing. All right. So I'll see you, my beta peeps in the forums. If you're just hanging out, thanks for watching. See you guys next time. Take care.